What's up, everybody? It's Greg Birch with Delta Financial, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. And we bring on guest speakers. Today, I've got the honor and pleasure of welcoming Mr. Dr. Kevin Gazzara. Dr. Kevin, how you doing, sir?
I'm great, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I appreciate you asking. And thank you so much for coming on and to sharing your insight and your experience and wisdom with the audience today. I think this is going to be a great podcast.
My pleasure.
So for those of you that don't know who Dr. Kevin Gazzara is, he is the senior partner of Magna Leadership Solutions, which was founded in 2007, and the co-author of the acclaimed book, The Leader of Oz, and Ready, Set, Get Hired. He is an ICF certified coach and certified positive intelligence mental fitness coach. Kevin has taught management and leadership development in the corporate world during his 18 years at Intel Corporation and as a university professor at 6 universities for the last 27 years. Kevin holds a BS in Commerce and Engineering from Drexel University, an MBA from Philadelphia University, and a Doctorate of Management and Organizational Leadership from the University of Phoenix. Dr. Kevin, well, I love specifically the positive intelligence.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan. Do you know Sean Acor?
I don't know, Sean.
So Sean Acor is a positive psychologist that studies the power of positivity in psychology and how it actually affects multiple areas of your life, your performance, sales performance, doctors' abilities to diagnose problems quicker, for their brains to basically operate at a higher capacity just by focusing on positivity and being more positive in life.
Yeah, it's the positive intelligence stuff. I had gotten involved with that probably about 2 or 3 years ago. From the book, Positive Intelligence. So if you want to go read a book, a recommendation for the people listening to this, if you want to read a great book, there's a process that was developed by a gentleman from Stanford by the name of Shirzad Chamine, and he wrote this book, and I went through the 6-week program that he had. I was so enthused with it, ultimately got certified. I'm actually number 74 as a certified positive intelligence coach. I've been doing that for about 2 years. And for my coaching practice, I'd say it's probably been life-changing. I use this for all of the executives and I coach and for business coaching that I do. So great book, great read, great program. So I can't really say enough about it.
So when it comes to, a lot of people probably don't understand what positive intelligence or positive intelligence coaching is. Give us a down and dirty. Give us talk a little bit about what it is and like how people can apply it to their business as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So for anyone that's kind of learned about emotional intelligence, when I was doing all my doctoral research, I did a lot of work on human motivation, engagement, emotional intelligence, and so forth. Daniel Goleman had written the original book back in the 90s on emotional intelligence. Great research out of Rutgers, wonderful information. And I've been a proponent of emotional intelligence for, forever, since Goleman had written the book. And the challenge I've always had with emotional intelligence, so there's lots of assessments out there and so forth. The big challenge I've had with emotional intelligence is you read it, you score your emotional intelligence on the five different areas, and it basically says you're good at this and you can get better at this, both on kind of dealing with yourself and dealing with others. And the biggest challenge is it's the way Goleman has written it. It's much more descriptive than prescriptive, and it's always been a little bit of a challenge, even working with executives, of kind of what do I do next. What Shirzad has done with positive intelligence is he's essentially created an operating system. And he's taken a lot of the work that was done by Goleman, Dr. Gardner, Dr. Richard Boyatzis out of Case Western, and as an aggregator, kind of pulled it all together and developed a new assessment, or no, I wouldn't say a different way to look at emotional intelligence from a very positive perspective. And what it is it's about understanding your saboteurs, which is the one side of your brain, and your what he calls your sage brain of the the kind of the creative, how do I handle things, look at things from a positive perspective. And if you can kind of keep your saboteurs at bay, all of the kind of the judge in your brain that's telling you should be doing this, and really turn on your sage brain, you can create amazing things, and at the same point in time, really get in kind of touch with yourself, move to more of a positive perspective. It just makes life better in general. So if you can do that, and he gives you all of the prescriptive ways to do that. I don't want to go too much into it, other than there is a great application that he's developed that runs on your smartphone, whether it's an Android or an Apple phone. And what it does is it gives you your focus for the day. It reminds you on a regular basis to do some mindfulness type of things in 2-minute bursts. And then it tracks your performance with regard to how much you're building kind of what he calls the sage brain, or making those neural pathway connections. So if you can do that, I found it just kind of life changing, and we do pods every about 6 weeks or so, 6-week programs to help a good portion of them are executives. We're actually using it with some teams now to help them get better. So great stuff. Go get the book.
So how did you get into? So you said you've been in positive intelligence for about 2 years. What started that journey?
Well, I've been doing a lot of executive coaching. When I left, I spent 18 years at Intel, and when I had a personal goal to retire or do my next phase of life, I call it retirement. My wife doesn't call it retirement. Is to do my next phase of life, which was to really give back. So I started with Intel in '89 and worked there through 2007, and I had a personal goal to retire at 50, right? And fortunately, I was able to do that. And actually, I wanted to be able to work with smaller organizations that didn't have $10 million budgets, to do management leadership development. But while I was at Intel, and I started out in the technical side, I was a product manager, I was an ops manager, I was a general manager for a small division. And then I had the opportunity. Intel has this thing called a sabbatical. Every 7 years, you take 2 months off and you completely disconnect. And when you come back, it's usually a good time to try something new, a new position, or work on a new project. And when I was on my first sabbatical, right before I took the sabbatical for the couple years previous, I started doing a lot of management and leadership development training, right, for Intel University. And when I was out on sabbatical, the Intel University manager for Arizona, where I was living, or I'm currently living in Phoenix area, actually moved to Oregon. So they needed someone in Arizona, and the guy that was running Intel University for the world basically said, "Hey, I need somebody in Arizona. I've seen you teach. I know you have a passion for this. Would you consider kind of moving over from the technical side into the more of the human development side?" And I said, "Sure, that sounds like a great opportunity." So I did that, and for my last 10 years at Intel, I spent managing Intel University, and then moved into managing their management leadership development for the first and midline managers. And my goal was that I really found a passion for that. We used to do, the size was enormous. We used to do 2,500 managers and leaders in 10 different countries each year. And when I had retired, left Intel with 2 of my colleagues to start up Magna Leadership Solutions, we had just finished training our 40,000th manager. So I got pretty good at doing that, and I found a passion for it. So I wanted to kind of bring that, Fortune 100 kind of style training and development to smaller companies that didn't have the budget, and I could really help them develop. And since it's been 15 years since we've been in business, I've been able to do that, and it's been fantastic. So my goal was I kind of created this system that's I can share with you about these kind of the 6 Ps of how do you make that transition from kind of the corporate world into becoming an entrepreneur.
Mm.
And
Let's go and jump into them.
It's worked incredibly well for me.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share that with the listeners, and hopefully it's valuable to them. I usually end up having this conversation probably about once a month with different people that have either gotten downsized, or they're thinking about moving on, or they're getting ready to do their next phase of life or retirement, whatever it is. And quite often what I found, in fact, I just had this conversation with one of the executives I've been coaching for the last year and a half, an IT manager, and he's looking at, so what's my next phase of life? He's in his early 40s, and he would like to be able to do the same thing to make that shift before you get 60 to 65 and retire. And one of his biggest challenges, he says, I've been doing a lot of reading about it, and he says one of the big challenges for individuals, Greg, I don't know whether you found this, but one of the big challenges for individuals of moving from the corporate world into where you're kind of a solopreneur or working with a small team is that's a major kind of cliff, a shift, mind shift that happens, and quite often it feels really good initially, and then as you don't have that support structure in place, and you also don't have the income that you had, that you depended on, that it's quite a mental challenge. So he wanted to know, how it happened for me, and I really had a 10-year plan. Right? I had, when I was 40, I basically said, hey, I had a great mentor that I worked with at Intel. I had a great financial advisor. I had kind of all the pieces in place, and we kind of stuck to the plan. Trust the process.
Yeah.
So what I found is that if you have a plan and kind of where you're going, then you can use all of the time prior, whether it's 10 years before or 5 years before, or maybe it's 2 years before. The thing is don't wait until you have to make that change, or where that change is made for you. And I think that's the biggest challenge I have with most of the people that I coach, is that they get dropped into it and they haven't prepared. And I think if you prepare, the transition is really quite easy. So I'm going to give you my 6 Ps of what you need to be, how to be a successful entrepreneur and how to make that change.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say is, and these are in no particular order, is when I was getting ready to do this and start up Magna Leadership, first of all, I took 2 of my colleagues with me. We got together and put a business plan together, and we said, hey, we're all interested of kind of making the shift. So Dr. Ali Lakhani and Marlene Lundy, the 3 of us left all at the same time, on a Friday, and Monday, voila, we had a business, or we were starting a business with no clients, and we had to figure out how to build that up. So the key is having that support structure in place. And also we tapped into, I'm part of Target Training International, a big company that provides lots and lots of assessments. They're out of Scottsdale, Arizona. And we've been working with, even when I was at Intel in 2000, we started working with Target Training International, and they provide assessments on emotional intelligence, on DISC, on values, on driving forces, on lots and lots of different ways to kind of help assess yourself, and great tools we use as a coach. And before we left, or before I left, I tapped into probably their top 15 distributors, or what they call value-added resellers. And I wanted, and being kind of a researcher, I like to do a lot of research. What I had asked them, the people that had built these $1 and $10 million $10 million plus businesses as entrepreneurs, as consultancies, what do I need to have in place before I kind of pull the ripcord and leave the corporate world? And what I noticed is there were five different areas that they focused on, and I've added a 6th since I've been in the entrepreneur world that I think is equally as important that they didn't really kind of focus on. And I think the first thing that they told me, I call them the 6 Ps. The first P is the product, right? That first of all, you need something unique and differentiated, right? Kind of what I would call a shtick, right? For kind of figuring out what do I do differently. And I think some of the challenges is that when I've coached individuals, Greg, is that they say, you know, I've got a lot of experience and I can do this and I can teach and I'm knowledgeable about this. And I ask them, you know, what differentiates yourself from everybody else that's going to be in this similar situation? And most people can't really kind of tell you that. So what I would do is when I'm coaching somebody is I'd say, kind of list all your attributes that you have, you know, experience, knowledge, certifications, certificates, values, things that list all of those, and then look for the combination that nobody else has, and that's kind of your stick. What can you offer them, particularly if you're going to be an entrepreneur or coach, right? Now, so like in my situation, one of the things that's really unique about me is that, you know, most people that do executive coaching or people that train a lot of leadership stuff are great, you know, trainers. And my difference, I would say my shtick is, you know, coming with, you know, 30 years of engineering background and then, you know, 15 years of doing kind of the HR, the soft skill stuff, melding those together and then kind of adding all doctoral research on top of that. You know, I have both of the kind of technical brain as well as, you know, the human brain. And what I found is a lot of the trainers that I work with, you know, are great trainers, but they can't say, yeah, I know I manage the relationship with, you know, when we're doing code development with Microsoft or Apple or whatever. So being able to connect with the technical side, the technical people has been, you know, invaluable to me as an entrepreneur. So that's the first P. The second P I have is presence, right? That you really need to kind of be present. People need to be able to find you on social media, right? So you have to start building whatever social media platform is most appropriate for you. You know, we are very highly present on Twitter. We use YouTube. LinkedIn is one of the big sources for us to stay connected with our clients. In fact, we use there's a great tool that we learned about through a virtual assistant that we had for a few years, many years ago, called Meet Edgar, that actually goes in and finds articles. And the first thing I do every morning is I look at the different articles that it proposes to me, and then the ones that are good, I post up to all of our social media feeds simultaneously. So you need to have presence in order for people to find you. I'm sure that you found that out as well.
Yes, absolutely. Agree.
So product and presence. The third P is people, right? You need to have that network. And that's one of the things that I think was a big advantage for me when I left Intel is, you know, I had actually trained, because Intel maintains your instructor records, right? So they have a great system for that. When I had left, I had personally trained 4,000 managers over the 18 years that I was there. So many of the managers had left Intel, went to other companies or did startups and so forth. And I had quite a few of them kind of in my LinkedIn profile. So I would just regularly kind of tap into them. And many, I'd say probably 90, maybe 85% of our business comes from referrals, right? So people that I've worked with or have known that has worked with one of us, and that's just kind of perpetuated over the last 15 years. So I'd say, you know, make sure that you have a good network. If you haven't had a good network, now's a great time to start building it.
Building that network, yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, we wrote a book. I actually wrote a book with one of my ASU grad students about a year and a half ago called Ready, Set, Get Hired, right? And it's a process that we use to um, not only find for people that are looking for positions, you can use the same process to get clients as well. In fact, we've even thought about doing a second version called Ready, Set, Get Clients or Get Customers. And at the end of this session, I'll give you a link and you can give away a copy of the book to your listeners.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Sure, my pleasure. So product presence and people. And the fourth P is what I call provisions, or it's cash, right? The one thing that all of the $10 million consultants had told us is you need to have enough money to sustain yourself for 18 to 24 months. It's really an investment in yourself, an investment in your company, because you're going to take that steady paycheck that you had in the corporate world and it's going to go to zero. And one of the big things, as I think many of your listeners probably know, I'm sure, Greg, as you know, is that that most independent consultancies or small businesses fail in that period of time by 18 to 24 months. And
Yes.
a good portion is well, there's lots and lots of reasons. A good portion is they're not properly capitalized. So what the experts have told us was, any money that you're going to make in that first year and a half to 2 years, you just have to look at that as a windfall. And you need to, the minute that you have to start thinking, oh, I only have, 2 months left. I just did a call with a colleague that said, yeah, I've got about 5 months of, and he's a very senior person, I've got about 5 months of savings that I can last before I have to move on. And I said, Joe, that's just not going to be enough. I mean, if you're making 200,000 a year, whatever the number is, as an exec, it's going to take you, a long time, much longer, to either find a position or get something started where you can start making the kind of money that's necessary. So, that's the thing is you need to make sure that you have enough kind of cash in the bank and look at it as an investment. So that was the fourth one, provisions. And the fifth one was you need a publication. You need and everyone told us the same thing. You need a hardcover book, not a softback. You need a hardcover book, that you can hand to someone, particularly if you're trying to influence executives, be able to hand that to them. And so we wrote the book called The Leader of Oz. We wrote that many years ago. And probably the one thing I would say, it's absolutely been the best thing that we ever did, right? That we took this story of, first of all, Dr. Lacani and I started writing this academic book on leadership because we both have our doctorates in that area in leadership. And it was just so boring that we didn't even want to read it. So at some point in time, I just said, hey, why don't you just do something that's fun that other people will read? We just finished, both of us like the business parables, like Who Moved My Cheese and Icebergs Melting and those kind of things. Something simple, yet at the same point in time, kind of grounded academically. So we found out that both of our favorite movies was the Wizard of Oz. So I said, hey, why don't we write a book? We'll call it The Leader of Oz. And we went to the Library of Congress. Nobody had done that. We thought, oh, there's probably 100 people that had done that. No one had done that. So we grabbed the name and we wrote the book. And we basically kind of created this story of this company in Kansas that's whisked away and dropped into Silicon Valley, and you have the wicked VP from the east and the wicked VP from the west. And all of the characters follow Frank Baum's characters that
all the archetypes.
Yeah, all the archetypes, exactly. So the publication, the fifth item of the hardcover book was just completely invaluable. And in fact, we're getting ready to do our third printing of it. So it's done really well. Great to use if you're going to do keynote speaking, to include it as part of your package. So I would recommend to do that. And that scares away a lot of people. It's like, well, I'm not a writer. I'm not a great writer. I don't know what I write about. And you'd be surprised how much really great knowledge that you may have that you can share, that you could put into a book. And doing a book today, even much easier than when we had done it, when we first started thinking about it more than 10 years ago, was that you can easily publish it on Kindle or Amazon Direct. You can work with other people, ghostwriters or whatever, to help you do that. You can get editors. We used Upwork. It's a great place to get people to help you with, whether it's writing or editing or give you ideas or sounding boards. In fact, we just released the book itself on audio, right? So if you go to Audible, you can listen to it. And we found a great voiceover artist out of Chicago to do the book for us. So we released that last year. Anyway, so that's the fifth item, and then the sixth item of the 6 Ps is the kind of I've added, which I think is implied, yet nobody I think has really kind of included it specifically, as persistence, right? You need to have that determination to get through the difficulty, and what I have found is too many people try to do it on their own. And my recommendation is get a coach, and it's going to really accelerate yourself into the kind of getting into the marketplace, whether it's a coach or a partner or a confidant or somebody that you can work with, another consultant that can kind of accelerate that.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, I think one of the things most people, like when I'm talking to people that are interested in doing this, most people say, gee, I've got money put away for this, but I really can't hire a coach or really afford that. And my question to them is how much were you making prior to what you're doing now? How much money do you need to make to kind of sustain yourself and build a business? And what would it be? What would the advantage be is if you can accelerate that type of income just 1 month faster, right? And most of the time, if you can accelerate it, people say, well, it's probably worth, $5 or $10 or $20,000 more. And the question is, well, why wouldn't you hire somebody that has done this so that you can do that? Why not make the investment up front so that you can start earlier? And I think too many people just try to do it on their own because, like, they know, well, there's a lot of stuff on the internet, where to go. I've done this kind of stuff before, but ultimately, when we're trying to make that big corporate shift over, I think you talked about it quite a bit in your podcast 58, right? The last one you had done about your best motivational speech is kind of going all in, having kind of belief in doing that, and also kind of making sure that you have the resources available to you, so that as you go in all in, you can stay focused and improve your possibility of success.
Absolutely. I love all those. I really like the perseverance. So a lot of times people, when they start as an entrepreneur, they don't realize they overestimate how quickly they'll find success, and they underestimate the amount of success they can have in, say, 1, 2, 3 years.
Absolutely. And in fact, one of the big challenges, right, when COVID hit, I'm part of the National Speakers Association, and I work with a lot of the different consulting groups. And when COVID hit, a lot of my colleagues had a really, really difficult time. As it turned out for us, we have something called the Leading Forward Academy. It's a 6-month leadership program to really change cultures and move to this kind of the positive perceptions and outlooks. When COVID hit, we were doing everything live. So we were on a plane to Dubai and Tokyo and Shanghai and all kinds of other places throughout the U.S. And when COVID hit, we had many customers that were kind of right in the middle or just starting the program and had done some stuff live, and they didn't want to lose the momentum. So they said, hey, can we move this all virtually? And although we love live activities and live workshops. We weren't able to do that any longer, so we moved everything virtually, and it worked really well, right? Surprisingly, and it saved the customers a lot of money because they didn't have to pay for us flying around, and they didn't have to get hotel rooms or conference rooms and so forth. So it actually turned out really well. We've had our best years. The last 3 years have been the best we've ever had in 15, and a lot was because we had persistence, right? We were able to persevere, look at things differently, kind of meet the customer needs. And there were some growing pains in doing that, with Zoom and Microsoft Teams and so forth. We learned a hell of a lot. And I would say right now, of all the clients that we have two that have gone back to live just because they're local in the Phoenix area. So it makes it really easy. They don't really have to fly us in and out.
Yeah.
And all the other clients have stayed virtual, and it's worked really well for them.
That's a key piece. Yeah, when it comes to being an entrepreneur, you will get challenges. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and you have to be able to be flexible and find you're a problem solver now. You have to find solutions to the problem. And so the problem at that time in your business was COVID. Well, how do we change our methods or the product or the service or the delivery in order to still maintain these relationships while also meeting under these new guidelines, right? And you guys came up with it, you learned a lot, and you adapted and grew. And, I think as an entrepreneur, it's imperative to understand that, like, you're going to have to solve a lot of these problems sometimes, and be resourceful in your own right, and find ways to scale or grow or to change the business in order to provide a service in a different way, right? So that you market yourself or you are unique in some way that you can stand out with your specific product, like with your first P. But no, that's fantastic that you were able to do that and kind of showcase that. I'm sure you learned a lot. So do you mostly work with like corporate clients, or are you also working with like individual entrepreneurs that are looking to scale and grow as a coaching in that sense as well?
Yeah, well, I think there's two sets of clients that we have, and thanks for the question, Greg. We primarily work when we do our Leadership Academy, which runs anywhere. Typically, it's a 6-month program. It's a completely integrated system of workshops and mastermind sessions and reinforcement messages and coaching. And we have a tool called the Easy 360 feedback tool that we use so that people can really quantify the results, right? I think that's one of the things that we learned. We worked with a developer, a web programmer that created this tool that you can set up in about 5 minutes. And what it does is it tracks the types of things that you're working on. So we meet with the different managers, whether it's one-on-one or it's in the groups. Typically, our workshop classes run anywhere between 12 to 24, and it tracks their progress. So at the end of the workshop, the end of the program, they can hand something that's quantitative to their manager. Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges with a lot of training. We don't do training. They bring in real work and they do the real work so that you can kind of see that change. So if they can do that, and they can show it quantitatively to be able to hand a graph and a chart that says, hey, I've been working on these 5 things on communication and follow through and team engagement or whatever the things that they want to work on, and show that they've gone from a 2.5 to a 4, and they've made that progress. And a lot of times, what the real thing that shows up that's probably the most valuable to clients is that they keep the people they have motivated and engaged, and more importantly, is they retain them. So they really cut down that revolving door. So we have 2 sets of clients. Typically, our group clients, where we do the workshops, I'd say our sweet spot is probably 500 to 1,000 people companies. A lot of times we'll work with a small group, like we'll work with the supply chain group that has 100 people in there. And we work with larger companies. Like we're working with another company, it's about 200,000 people, and we're working with one particular department, it's about 80 people. So we typically work more better in that rather than doing big kind of company initiatives where we're going into Apple or Google or someone trying to kind of sell our stuff and roll it out to other people. So I'd say that's the first client that we have, and the other clients we have are ones that want individual coaching, right? And it can be an entrepreneur. Typically, it's more of someone that is, well, it's an entrepreneur that has started or is about to start something, trying to kind of help them do business coaching of kind of what's necessary, working through the 6 Ps, and kind of getting them set up for success, or helping them. I have one client right now I'm doing executive coaching with. Is having a challenge of kind of rebuilding the organization or getting the organization to kind of refocus in a way that's much more customer centric. So that's just he has a small team of about 7.
Okay. So looking at that, like this is what I'm taking away. It's the big takeaways for what you're teaching here is, I love that you started your entrepreneurial journey after about a 20-year career, but you utilized all the experience that you had gained over basically the last 10 years of leadership. And you implemented a lot of your, like you said, your skills base from being an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And but you utilized all this to create a product and a service. And for the listeners that are listening to this, there's probably something within your life that you have a lot of experience with that you can take to market, that you can revamp, take to market in order to provide. Like that's a very extensive, a 6-month leadership academy. That's a pretty extensive product. It probably took a lot of time for you. And I mean, you probably knew it like the back of your hand because you've been running it so much for 10 years. So you're basically taking that same exact academy structure and you're making some tweaks, right? And you're doing a lot of the same strategies because you've been building and doing this exact same thing for year after year after year. But you can take the time to create that product or recreate it in your own image, and you can bring it to market in order to start your business. But the second piece of it that I'm taking away that I really like is the value that you're bringing to the client. That you just said it and you talked about it, but it's not just training these
Right.
individual. It's there's a retention factor. So like you're actually saving them money. So when you go to actually pitch this product to a corporate employee, you could talk about, hey, like I'm going to pay for myself in the amount of people that you keep. And it's going to save in recruiting costs and hiring costs and like the revolving door of losing people. You're not only going to be able to keep these people, but I'm going to make sure that I take them to the next level. And here's our metrics. I can show you, here's all this quantifiable data of
Right.
previous clients I've worked with and everything I've done over my tenure in teaching leadership. This is what I can show you. It's basically going to pay for itself, right? It's actually going to make you money. So if you can create that product or service that you can show with that quantifiable data, that what the benefit's going to be, you're basically creating a product that is so attractive that it's difficult for people to say no. Like it's a no brainer.
Absolutely. In fact, let me give you kind of a 5-minute case study story that'll kind of bring what you just said to kind of light. So one of the things that we recognize is that when you're trying to sell concepts to people, particularly things that are kind of training related or workshops, where you're doing that learning, if you can't really get an ROI on it, one of the things to say is then you really have to ask yourself why you're investing. So we developed a tool. If you go to attritioncalculator.com, anybody can use it. It's free. And what we do is we do value selling. So we had a big client up in northern Phoenix, did, I would say, kind of customer service-ish, very much more specific. relatively large company, about 400. They had lots of agents, and the turnover was just terrible. So they had called us and said, the, the HR director and CEO had said, "Hey, we are losing people. It takes about 2 years to get people kind of fully up to speed, so they're really accelerating their job, and we're losing people at about a year to 18 months. So we can never get everybody up to speed, and it's creating a lot of chaos. It's costing us a fortune." So I asked them, "So what's it costing you to hire?" And they had no idea. So we said, "Well, let's go to the site, go to bringupattritioncalculator.com. It says, how many employees do you have?" It's like, "They've got 400 employees. What's your turnover?" 32%. 32%. And you hit enter, and it basically will tell you instantly, using about 20 different variables, and it tells you what are the variables. It tell you instantly what it's costing you. And we said, and it was costing about $7 million a year, to do the hire and rehire and all the downtime and the inefficiencies. So we said to them really simply. So I said, "We probably can't get all of that for you. We can't get it to zero, but we can. I'm sure we can cut it in half, right? So what would that be worth to you?" And they said, "Well, it's probably worth about $3.5 million." Okay, so okay, so what would be a good return on investment for you for $3.5 million? How about if I gave you a 10-to-1 return on investment? Would you give me 350,000? Like, I don't know. How about I gave you 100-to-1 return on investment? For $35,000, I'll get that down in half. And if we can't get it down in the 6 months, we'll stay on with you till we can get it there. Would you invest that money? Now, normally we can't get 100-to-1, but it's easy to get 10-to-1 or 20-to-1. And usually if the client's hesitant, like about spending 30 or 40 or 50,000, whatever the number is, to save, $3 million, then that's probably not a good client for us. Right?
Yeah.
So
they don't understand the value at that point.
Right. Exactly. So I believe, so as an entrepreneur, people that are doing this, the selling, this was not designed to be a kind of a sales approach. Is do value proposition selling. Talk to get the people. Most people don't understand. You would think that everybody kind of wouldn't have that right on the tip of their tongue. Most people have no idea, right? And if you can't provide them a product that's going to help them, where they're going to get an ROI, maybe you can't get them the 100-to-1, maybe you get them 10-to-1, 2-to-1. I don't know about you, but I'm not investing. If I invest $1,000, I'm not getting $2,000 out of any of my investments these days.
Yeah.
A 2-to-1, and if you can guarantee it, then I can say you've probably got a really good product. I think the other thing that I would mention, and you started talking about it, is you've got a lot of experience. Is listen to that inner voice that you have. What's the stuff that you get really, really excited about? And see, if anyone's ever done kind of the Venn diagrams, you want to look for stuff that you're passionate about. You want to look at stuff that you have kind of experience or knowledge about, and you want to look for, are there clients out there that are going to pay for it, right? So, and it's that kind of intersection in those three areas where every day is going to be a great day, because you come in, you just can't wait to get started.
Absolutely. I agree with that. If you can stay within that Venn diagram and you are excited, you're passionate about what you're doing, it does make a difference. Absolutely. Especially as an entrepreneur. I wouldn't say it's required, but you want to get to that point pretty quickly. So because it's going to drive you on those difficult days. It's going to drive you when the challenges come. It's going to help to keep you focused when there's those times that the work needs to get done and you don't want to do it.
Yeah, that's the 6P, right? Which is it allows you to maintain that persistence, right? And if you're not interested in it, one of the guys I'm coaching right now is making his transition, and he said, "Hey, not quite. I've been in the big corporate world, and I'm thinking about buying a franchise." And I said, okay. And she said, oh, this one there's a really good ROI on this. I forget what it was. And, you know, uh, brake, brake repair or something, which is completely out. He said, tell me, how interested are you in brake repair? Like, even though looks like it has a really good ROI for the franchise, like, you know, it could be a business. It's like, okay, take that off your list. Like, if you are not passionate about it, do not. And he said, well, I'm passionate about making the money. It's like, no, no, no. If you're not interested in the product, right, and you can talk about it just kind of emotionally, you know, it may start out as an interesting investment. It's just going to turn out to be complete drudgery. So, so I think he hasn't pulled the trigger yet. I think I've kind of steered him away from that. That's something hopefully that a good coach would do for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dr. Kevin, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your 6Ps and sharing your experience and your story. And I love the concept of your book, The Leader of Oz. I actually wrote it down. I'm going to go pick that up. I'm an avid reader, so I love picking up new books. So the last question I always ask is if you had the opportunity to sit with 3 individuals, anyone in history that you could break bread with, learn from, just have a conversation with and hang out with, who would those 3 people be?
Wow, boy, that's a really interesting conversation. You know, and I would think that many people would tell you about, you know, I'd love to be able to sit down with John F. Kennedy or, you know, Elon Musk or Steve Jobs or whatever. You know, and I would probably go much more along the lines of people that I look at that have really changed the world, right? And it's something that's been sustainable. So, you know, so I would say I'm a spiritual person. I would say I'm overly religious. You know, if I could sit down with Jesus Christ and have a conversation with him to understand his philosophy, and then people think along those same lines. You know, sit down with Gandhi, or even sit down with the Dalai Lama. You know, to me, I think that's where I could learn the most. It'd be a little bit different, you know, if I was only focused on just business. You know, it would be people like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or Richard Branson, those type of individuals, just to get a deeper insight into things that you know, are currently, you know, kind of interesting the business models.
Nice, nice. Well, Dr. Kevin, I appreciate you coming on board and having this conversation. Thank you so much. For the audience, there was a lot of value that was in this podcast. Make sure you go back, you listen to it. You can help support Dr. Kevin by going and buying his book, The Leader of Oz, and by sharing this content. If you learned anything, if you grew, if this expanded your mind or got you to see things from a different perspective, then it takes you only a second to rate, review, subscribe, share this content with other people that can also get value from it. It means the world to us. It probably only takes you about 60 seconds. So we would appreciate it. This has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch, as always. Until next time, we'll see you. Take care.